What's up, Bulls Nation? It's the Bloody Horns podcast. I'm your host, Justin. Let's get into it, man. So, Bulls aren't playing right now, but we still got to keep this content thing going. So, yesterday I compared Nikola Vucevic to Carlos Boozer. Booze, when I put it on Twitter, who's the most disappointing Chicago Bull that we can't blame on injury? Boozer, he was a popular answer. So, I went through and I compared the two. I compared their seasons. I thought Booze came out ahead. I'm a Booze apologist. I thought he gave us exactly what we paid for. People who were expecting defense from him didn't really watch him in Utah. So I came out favoring Booze in that comparison. You guys go into the archives, watch the video. Let me know what you think. So today we got a different one. We got Ben Wallace. So let me set the stage for you guys when it comes to Ben Wallace. So the year is the 2005-2006 season. Ben Gordon in his second year. Luol Deng in his second year. Kirk Heinrich in his third year. Tyson Chandler. We got Andres Nocioni, Chris Duhon. We got a scrappy crew, right? Scrappy crew. They win 44 games that year. They make the playoffs. They lose to the eventual champion Miami Heat in those playoffs. No shame in that game. Shaq and Kobe, or not Shaq and Kobe, Shaq and Wade. Tough team to beat, especially when you're a young team, but they put up a fight. So they go into that offseason. They got some cap space. They decide to get aggressive. Let's go get aggressive. Let's go get Ben Wallace. So they trade Tyson Chandler to the Hornets. They get back P.J. Brown, who was a big part of the team the next year. J.R. Smith, who they waive right away or trade right away. I can't really remember. Either way, they don't keep J.R. Smith. Free up that cap space, and they go sign Ben Wallace. Ben Wallace at this point, 4-time Defensive Player of the Year, 2-time reigning Defensive Player of the Year. The Detroit Pistons, for the last, 4 years, had won 60 games. They were consistently the best team in the East, but they hadn't got over that hump since their championship. They lost to the Spurs the following year in the championship, lost in the Eastern Conference Finals the next 2 years. They just couldn't quite get there, couldn't quite get over that hump. So in comes Ben Wallace to the Chicago Bulls. The Chicago Bulls, they figure we're going to trade out Tyson Chandler, who at that point had injury risks, hadn't really been healthy. They had shipped Eddie Curry to the Knicks long before that. So they had a need in the middle. So we're going to bring in Ben Wallace. He's a little older, but we think his game's going to age well. So they bring him in. They drafted Tyrese Thomas early in that offseason too. They drafted him number 3. So they figure Ben Wallace, he's 6'9", he's big, he's a great defender. Maybe he can teach Tyrese Thomas some of this stuff. So first year in, goes great. Bulls win 49 games. They go 49-33. Ben Wallace, second team all defense. But his numbers, there was slippage in his numbers. His points were down, rebounds were down, steals, blocks, everything was down. His rebounding percent was down. The most concerning thing was the field goal percent. So the year before, he had shot 51% in Detroit. Pretty standard for his career. He was a guy, he shot like 5 times a game. It was all layups, dunks, tip-ins, stuff like that. First year in Chicago, he drops down to 45%. That's pretty rough. When all your stuff is right around the rim, it's pretty rough to drop down to 45%. So Bulls win 49 games. They take on the Heat again in the playoffs. They beat the Heat this time. They sweep the Heat. Ben Wallace did exactly what he was supposed to do that first year. Even if the numbers were down, he got the Bulls over the hump. He got them to the next level of the playoffs. Where Ben Wallace becomes a disappointment is the next year. The next year is a total disaster. So as I mentioned, Tyrese Thomas the year before, Ben Wallace kind of mentors him. Doesn't really go that well. Tyrese barely plays. There's attitude issues with him from the get-go pretty much. You're reading reports, coaching staff not real high on his work ethic, whatever. That offseason, they go ahead, they draft Joakim Noah. Similar thought process. They're like, hey, we're going to have Noah. He's going to sit behind Ben Wallace, one of the best defensive centers of all time. He's going to learn a little bit. He's going to grow. He's going to be our center of the future. Ben Wallace and Joakim Noah don't get along at all. They are two totally different dudes. There's a confrontation. Joakim doesn't really like the fact that there's a no headband rule on the team, but Ben Wallace is exempt from that rule. Ben Wallace doesn't like the fact that it's a rookie calling him out on this. So there's a scrap in the locker room. There's a scuffle. Joakim gets suspended. Ben Wallace, man, he starts wearing thin in Chicago. Scott Skiles gets fired. They decide to revamp the thing, and Ben Wallace is playing horrible. His points are down, rebounds are down. His shooting percentage is down to 35%. 35%. The team's playing horribly, so they ship Ben Wallace out of there. They get Drew Gooden, Larry Hughes back. Finish the year pretty weak, but they do get the number 1 pick. It leads to Derrick Rose. So you can kind of say Ben Wallace, in a weird sort of way, led to Derrick Rose, but is Ben Wallace more disappointing than Nikola Vucevic? It's a fair question. I'm going to say no because of the team success. Those Chicago Bulls that won 49 games his first year here, They got to the second round of the playoffs. He delivered on that. He took an organization that was at this step and he brought him to this step. Nikola Vucevic, he was kind of brought in for the same thing. Remember, when the Bulls made that trade, they were in position to make the play-in game that season and make a playoff push. Obviously, that season they fell out of it. The next season, they made the first round of the playoffs, but it's all been downhill since then. So Nikola Vucevic was brought in to bring us somewhere. Hasn't really brought us anywhere, and his numbers are horrible this year. So it's a fair comparison. There is pretty equal. It's a toss-up to me, but you guys let me know what you think in the comments. If you're not following, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Follow on social media, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, whatever. It's all the same, @HornsBloody. Take it easy, guys. We got the rookie-sophomore game tonight. I won't be watching. I haven't been interested in that in a while. All-Star Saturday tomorrow. Let me know what you guys think about that.